My name is Luis. I'm the CEO of Obitus Games, and the most Web3 thing I did today was tell myself to touch grass.
Okay, great. Happy to be here for our second podcast series, which is Metaverse Odyssey, a kind of podcast talking with Web3 founders and be inspired about Web3 and how they're actually building a new business in this challenging ecosystem. I'm Flav, and I'm with Luis, founder of Obitus Games. I'm super happy to have you with me today. So if you can introduce yourself, explain who you are and what is Obitus Games.
Thank you for having me. First and foremost, I'm Luis. I'm the CEO of Obitus Games, and Obitus Games is a company trying to create experiences that put players at the center of their favorite fantasies.
Okay. So what will be the kind of gaming experience you're aiming to provide to everyone? Do you already have some thought about what would be the kind of game you want to deliver?
So for us, it starts with the fantasy. Every gamer has a fantasy that they want to fulfill in a game. And for us, for example, the kind of experiences that we're building right now are mostly centered about a sci-fi fantasy, which is, at least my generation, we grew up a lot with the have your own toy robot fantasy, right? And so for me, it's a fantasy that is very dear to my heart. It's one of my, it comes from one of my earliest childhood memories. And so it's something that I've always wanted to build. So for me, the most important thing here is how will players feel if they are seeing themselves in a position where they can bring that fantasy into reality.
I see.
And so that's what Obitus Games is trying to build right now.
So the merge of a digital and gaming experience you could live with the physical experience of owning something, maybe like toy.
Yes, right.
Awesome. Did you actually buy robot's toy in the Chinese market in Singapore? Because we are in Singapore, I'm going to talk about that. But did you?
I haven't yet. Okay. I'm on business mode, but I have some time that I'm reserving to that.
I know where to go, so I'm going to give you some
awesome.
places.
That's
Because,
awesome.
yes, as a context, so the idea of Metaverse Odyssey is to go to everywhere across the globe and try to meet some Web3 founders. And now we are at Token 2049 in Singapore, one of the biggest conferences of Web3, and obviously also a very good Chinese market. So maybe that would be my next question. Why did you decide to go to Token 2049 specifically? What were your expectations?
So that fantasy that I mentioned about owning a toy robot and so on, and I have a story that I want to tell you later about that. It is the fact that it's it's inspired in anime. And so me being a big otaku fan, like I've been watching anime maybe for 30 years at this point. So most of my life, my entire life. And so I wanted to come to Token 2049 in order to start cracking open the intricacies of launching a game in the Asia market. Okay. And so for me, it was about learning what the partners over here want, what the public wants, what are players expecting out of experiences, and especially with Web3 being so global now, more than ever, I feel like it's important, yes, to have a global perspective, but it's also important to understand the intricacies of each individual audience to provide an experience that is as seamless as possible.
Yeah. And I mean, every market in the world, ecosystem of players, they know what is a collectible in terms of the culture, but I mean in Asia it's massive. Like especially you're going to be at Tokyo Game Show, I guess, as far as you said to me before. And Asia as a whole, with the Pokemon, with the Digimon, and every kind of stuff we see in the market in the gaming, collectibles is a big thing, I guess. So you want to play a big role.
Right, right, and especially it's not gonna be my first time in Japan. I actually love Japan. I go every time I have the chance, and one thing that I've noticed about collectibles in general, from cars to figurines, like it's kind of the same phenomenon where people use it as a way to express who they are. And in here in Asia, I feel like that has a very strong connotation because of the culture, the word culture, and how the culture is so homogeneous, right? And so they use collectibles like a specific niche things that only they and their friend group know about in order to basically shout to the world, this is who I am, right? Outside of work, outside of family, outside of social norms, this is who I truly am. And so it's a huge market, and that's why people collect everything, any kind of thing that you can think of. People, there's a niche community that collects that.
Actually, a good segue, because my next question will be, like, we are all about Web3 founders and how they feel about the ecosystem of Web3. So I would love to know your aha moment, like the moment when you said, I want to build a business in Web3 ecosystem. And it feels like, you tell me if I'm wrong based on what you just said, how you could actually make that happen to bound your personal identity offline with your digital identity, maybe identity of player. Is it the thing when you decide to be a business owner in the Web3 ecosystem?
So for me, it's a whole lot of things, right? Like, for example, one of the first things you said is about identity. So how we identify in the real life, in IRL, how we call it, and then online could be two different ways. Like online, I tend to play a really big sword, big cannon, berserker kind of guys, but if you meet me in real life, you're gonna be like, oh, this is just a nice guy, right? So in the end, right, like even the fantasy of creating a pseudo identity online, it's appealing because then you can participate in several, let's say, communities or in several fantasies that you have, and then just jump from one to the other. The second, I guess, part of the aha moment is scalability. You take the phenomenon of collecting and how collecting defines your identity, and owning something defines a lot of your identity. And so Web3 particularly lets you scale that, right? Because if I were to build physical robots that people will use as toys, like there's like building that hardware, then manufacturing that hardware, then putting that hardware into the retail store and the whole thing. With Web3, you can create these digital collectibles and put them in the hands of a user, truly put them in the hands of a user. Not just like, oh, I click and download a thing, but it's like, this is something that you own.
Full ownership.
Full ownership, right? In one click. Okay. And so for me, that's, as an entrepreneur, for me, that's a massive advantage. That you have, like, you're taking a phenomenon that usually requires a physical object that has all those, let's say, restrictions, or not restriction, difficulties in distribution, and then you remove those and then you make them purely online. And so, of course, you know, we're probably going to talk about the challenges of that, but without maybe going too deep into that, it's now about, we're in a moment right now, it's also about timing. Being an entrepreneur is also about timing. We are in the transitionary period where we can accept and understand that my physical collectible is equally valuable to my digital collectible. And this is gonna, I might go very philosophical here, but it's because the value is not the number in dollars that it costs to sell the thing. The value is the value that you imprint into that item. That item is worth zero until someone imprints emotional or time or social value into the thing.
I can't agree more. Like when I try to explain Web3, blockchain, and everything to people who don't know anything, who are very reluctant to learn about what it is, I say, but it's actually already happening, because we are in an ecosystem where you're living your life in the digital world, you're paying things digitally, you own, but you don't know, you don't own anything in your digital, and you also value very much your reputation offline and as much online, which is something new, like something we didn't have 15 years ago. So it's very new to actually value the both reputation you have offline and online. And now we are in a space where we could actually give you the opportunity to own your different things you own, digital goods you have, and with the blockchain and everything. So I totally understand your position. If you have to go back, like you build, how long have you built these new business on your own? Like, how long is Obitus Game?
Obitus Games was founded, it's a relatively new endeavor. It was founded in 2023, okay. March 2023. Okay. But the idea for Obitus Games has been in my mind for more than 10 years. Oh, wow. And so even my college buddies, that some of them are, I can call them colleagues and partners now, some of my college buddies, they're like, oh yeah, I remember Luis talking to me about this 10 years ago at the whole thing. But it just wasn't the moment. I've been a serial entrepreneur since 2009. Obitus Games is like, I believe, it's like the 10th company that I've co-founded in my life. I've mostly been in e-commerce, infrastructure, and so it's not my first Web3 company. But it's the first that it's about creating experiences. Okay. Been building infrastructure, because every time I wanted to create something, I always found something missing. And so I always went like an engineer, my background is engineering, it's like, hey, build this infrastructure piece first so you can build the thing on top later.
That's interesting. So which means, can you already compare your experience of building businesses in the Web2 world and in the Web3 world? Yes. What would be the kind of comparison you could make, the differences?
Oof. So for me, and this is a very personal thing, Web2 and Web3 don't exist. For me, they're just businesses. And so, for example, building an e-commerce business, for example, that uses the traditional financial system, railways, has advantages and disadvantages. The main advantage is everyone knows what it is, everyone understands everything. But then the differentiating factor then starts to become the thing. So, for example, something that drew me to Web3 was that every single user stood for something. Like every single user stands for something, even if it's making money. Like let's say, oh, my main driver is making money. They own that badge. They wear the T-shirt. They use the logos. Like they are for something. Usually in more traditional businesses, what ends up happening is that users are kind of anonymous. Like they don't have that strong individuality with them. And I feel like that's one of the biggest levers that you can pull using Web3 technologies to enhance your business.
So it's all about business. Although, do you feel like it's the same challenge to find a product market fit in the Web3 world?
Same challenge. You know why? Because, and again, this is my engineering brain here taking over. For me, it's about using the right tool for the right job. So for example, if I were presented with a business opportunity and you told me, hey, use this token or use this NFT and blah, 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 and the first thing I'll ask you is why? Like, why are you using this tool? And if you don't have a real reason, then it's like, oh, you're trying to kill a mosquito with a bazooka kind of thing, right? So in the end, not all opportunities make sense to use Web3 technology. Just like not all opportunities make sense not to use it, right? So that's kind of where I stand with that mindset.
Let me know if you already answered the question I will have with the thing you just said, but if so, not from the perspective of Obitus only, because you already built businesses in Web3 world, if we may say Web3, but if you had to go back before your experience of building business in Web3, and you will be able to meet your own self, what kind of advice you will tell him to do?
That's interesting. What I will tell my old self will be first, the most important thing about what you're doing right now is learning. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs go through startups like they don't take the time to absorb really what happened. Like building a startup is a very traumatizing experience because you are basically at the mercy of the market, and you're basically putting a lot of yourself into it, into a product, just to have the market tell you yes or no, right? And it's, for me, it's an endeavor of one of the earliest lessons that I learned was it's not about what you're building, it's about who you're building it with. And for me, that's what has made the most difference. And so if I could tell myself from at the beginning of my career as an entrepreneur, one lesson is keep focusing on the people that you're building with and the people you're building for.
Yeah.
And that is going to unlock a lot of the answers.
So not too much focus on the product you're building, but listening to the people who you work for and who you work with, and avoid any noise you could see, especially in the Web3/crypto market, to avoid some misguidance from the market, because it's super noisy. So as far as you could say, yeah, try to listen to the good people as well.
Listen to the people who are actually going to use your product. So many people do changes or change direction based on people who are not even going to use their product. Like someone can come in. So for example, just taking it back to what we're building at Obitus, if someone who doesn't truly have the fantasy of owning a toy robot and going on adventures with it and battling with it and competing with it, comes and tells me, hey, your game sucks, I'll be like, my game is not for you. My game is for people who have this fantasy or are interested in exploring that fantasy. Of course, suck is a very, like, you could go like, oh, objectively your game sucks, it has technical issues or whatnot. But I'm talking more about the essence. Like if at the essence that person is not going to end up consuming your product, yes, they might have something for you to learn, but in the end, I will prioritize always the people who are actually going to consume my product.
Awesome. So because we are in the gaming world, if you have to pick one game character, anyone you know in the ecosystem, in your fantasy, maybe a robot, but if you have to pick one very famous game character to actually raise the flag of the Web3 ecosystem, which one would you choose?
I will choose Mega Man.
Okay.
So Mega Man is an interesting character because he doesn't fall into the fantasy of, oh, you don't own him, like he's not your toy, he's a character, you're him in the games basically. But I feel like Mega Man has something that I always admired, and it's that no matter what challenges you put in front of him, he always adapted to the challenge. And if you couldn't let's say, go through the challenge with your current power, you could always go back, earn a new power, and then come and challenge the obstacle again. So I think Mega Man will be a really good mascot, as they call it in marketing, or like character to carry the Web3 flag.
I love this one. Yeah, go ahead.
And no, I was gonna say, and hopefully, like with what we're doing at Obitus, we can bring that spirit into Web3.
Got it. Perfect. Love this one. Love this pick. Last question will be, with your experience, 2025 is coming. If you have any kind of prediction you would like to share with us, what will be this prediction?
I think that we're gonna see the rise of the identity-driven consumerism. It's like, yes, right now, people, as part of their hobby, right, they go and as we were saying in Asian culture, they go and buy these things to scream to the world who they are. But I can see that seeping into all of life, not just the hobby.
Okay.
Because right now, when you start putting a value into the hands of people, right, and that value is liquid, right, like it goes all around, not just the globe, now the storefront, it's going in the internet and moving across the world. I feel like we're gonna see people using that identity to drive a lot of the business, or when I say business, not just making businesses, but everything that they do in life, like using their identity first, and in order to drive value to what they think fits their identity the most.
I see. Okay, so blockchain as a technology is bringing more value, and not just financial value, but value to in-game assets, any kind of digital assets, and it's actually going to help anyone because of how liquid it is to actually endorse that value more in the digital world than before.
And relate that value to my identity.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, if I'm gonna, if I'm gonna do a purchase and I have two products that are, let's say, basically identical, I'm gonna purchase the one that fits more with my identity, and I'm gonna wear that as part of who I am, and it's gonna use it for reinforcement. And what I think is that I think that yes, tribalism is a thing. It's now a thing, and it's gonna keep being a thing. But the thing that I see the most happening is that every person is gonna become a tribe of their own, and the difference is gonna be basically if people follow you or not, right? Like even if people don't, even if you are a tribe of one, you are a tribe that stands for something, and you're ready to welcome whoever who stands with you. And now making that stance, it's gonna be easier than ever.
Love it. Thanks a lot, Luis, for being in the podcast. Really appreciate your sharing your expertise and vision about everything you're building. So thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope everyone can join us in the Web3 revolution.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. Thanks again.